Hello there, and great to have you here today at the Summer Sustainability Summit 2025. My name is Kim Koivula, and I lead the Sustainability Communications in the EU region at One Click LCA. Today, you are joining the world's largest online event for sustainable construction and manufacturing. This event is attended by thousands of professionals looking to advance and learn more about carbon transparency, which is reshaping how we design, build, and manufacture. So today we're joined by global leaders from the field pioneering the path towards truly meaningful decarbonization. You're joining one of three global sessions taking place today, and this particular session will be focusing on European sustainability regulations and competitiveness. And what you can expect from this session, well, first of all, a great lineup of speakers, including the European Parliament, Saint-Gobain, Ramboll, Uponor, and together they will explore how sustainability can sharpen Europe's competitive edge. But before we turn to our first session, a panel discussion with these companies, our friends at Schneider Electric have actually created a short message for all of you today. So, Coralie, over to you.
Hello everyone, my name is Coralie Vergez and I'm a Director of Partnering for Sustainability at Schneider Electric. I've been passionate about sustainability for the past 20 years and it's a real pleasure to be with you today for the 2025 Summer Sustainability Summit. Today, I would like to talk about a partnership we have been building between Schneider Electric and One Click LCA and that I have been leading since April 2024 when we first met with Panu Pasanen, One Click LCA's founder and CEO. Back then, Schneider Electric was about to launch its environmental data program, the result of 20 years of effort in making our environmental data available and accessible. As we talked with Panu Pasanen, it became obvious that One Click would be a great ally to amplify our efforts in terms of accessibility. Indeed, we'd heard from our customers and partners that the lack of environmental data for electrical and mechanical products was a pain point for them. It was hindering their environmental impact assessments and reporting efforts, and it made it harder for them to reach a given voluntary sustainability standard or even regulations. As a company, Schneider is committed to walking the talk and bringing its customers along a responsible and impactful journey to sustainability. This involves reducing the environmental footprint of our value chain, our own operations, and the use phase of our products and solutions. And it also involves making sure the environmental data of our products and solutions is available and accessible. So to increase the accessibility of our data, we decided that we needed to put our information where our partners and customers needed it to be. So with One Click LCA and its 20 plus plugins, including Revit Autodesk and IES, we are able to go a step further in terms of accessibility. Now, we have more than 50,000 commercial references with transparent environmental data on One Click LCA, including EPD digitized data and product technical characteristics. And this number will keep growing. So what's the impact for you? And more broadly, the architecture, engineering, consulting industry? Well, ASA professionals leveraging One Click LCA now have access to 50,000 electrical equipment commercial references with environmental data. They can simply consult it, add it to their projects in building ACA tools, or import the data to other software partners through OCL's plugins. So this should help AEC professionals gain in efficiency and accuracy to meet sustainability standards, regulations, or goals. Now, the journey is only starting, and we'd love to hear from your feedback, as well as what you expect next. For example, what are the use cases where you need Schneider Electric product and solution data? Or how can we increase accessibility? We look forward to hearing from you through our contact page on One Click LCA or se.com so that we can build a sustainable future together. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the summit.
Thank you so much, Coralie and Schneider Electric. This is fantastic news about reducing embodied carbon across the built environment. And I also want to mention that if you want to learn more about the Schneider Electric partnership with One Click LCA, we are now dropping a link in the comments section of the show, so you should be able to find the link in the chat right now. Next up, we are turning to the first session in today's show, which is a panel discussion on EU competitiveness and sustainability regulations. So, Abigail, I will hand things over to you for introducing our guests and the topic a bit further.
Hello and welcome to the first talk of today's European Sustainability Regulation and Competitiveness session, which is part of the 2025 Summer Sustainability Summit. So my name is Abigail and I lead Sustainability Communications at One Click LCA. Today I am delighted to be joined by Sirpa Pietikäinen. She's a member of European Parliament. I'm also joined by Ilari, who's the Vice President of Sustainability and Regulatory Affairs at Uponor, as well as Panu, CEO and founder of One Click LCA. Thank you all for being here. I'm so excited about today's conversation. And before we kick things off, I would love to ask each of you to share a short introduction to our audience today so that they get to know you and the sort of ideas and organization that you represent a bit more. So I'll pass this first to Sirpa.
Hello, and happy to be with all of you. Let's start with my educational background. I graduated from Helsinki School of Economics on business administration and economics, and since then being quite a lot in politics, but served in some of the company boards as well. And what I've been trying to do the whole big part of my life is to try to combine the environment and economics so that they match together and work together. And this means in my parliamentary term, I've been close to 16 years as a member of parliament, that I worked with circular economy, resource efficiency, and then sustainable finance, because as you know, the money runs the world. It is the blood circulation of the economy. And so we would need to get the incentives right there.
Ilari, tell us about you.
Well, thank you equally. It's a great pleasure being here. Thanks for inviting me to the discussion. I'm a historical mechanical engineer, graduated in the late 80s, and I've worked in the construction sector for 35 years now in different roles, research, consultancy, and now for the last 18, 19 years in the manufacturing side of things. But as with Sirpa, all through my career, sustainability in the built environment has been some sort of a strand. And now for the last 5-6 years, it's actually been my main role in the company. You mentioned that I represent Uponor. Just for those that may have missed it, yes, we used to be Uponor, but we were acquired a year and a half ago by the Swiss Georg Fischer Group. So we are now part of GF as a company. As said, my current main role is to run the sustainability and regulatory affairs function in our company. And that is quite a nice point of departure for this discussion, because we are actually talking about both.
And Panu, tell us, who are you? Why are you here today?
Yeah, great. So Panu, Pasanen, CEO, founder at One Click LCA, and we are trying to power the makers of a zero carbon future. And here we are talking about this from point of view of competitiveness, and that's obviously fundamentally important, because if we have sustainable products and nobody buys them, it doesn't really have a much purpose. So what we need to be sure of is that we have sustainable products that are preferred and purchased in volume, and that substitute over time the less sustainable ones. And how can we make that happen in this connection in Europe? But as a company, obviously, we work across the globe. So I'm looking forward to today's discussion.
Great. So let's kick things off for this roundtable conversation. And the first question that I have for you today is, how can a level playing field in environmental regulation help businesses to stay competitive and secure long-term market access? And Sirpa, I'll pass this to you first, if I might.
Thank you. I'll start with company strategies. Like in about 5 years old McKinsey report, it was said that during the times of great uncertainty, it's very important for companies to know what you can hold on. What do you know that is certain? Because if you just look the uncertainties, you just wander around. Okay, what is certain? Of course, the planet is aging, and it is the AI and digitalization, but the foremost is the planetary boundaries. It's not only climate change, it's not only biodiversity, it's many other factors. And this, whether we pay attention to it or not, whether there's the war in Ukraine or not, whether there's the Trump or not, this stays. And so sooner or later, all the companies as well as the societies need to solve it. Okay. Then the other part is that our economic system has been created in the times when you didn't know, you didn't have the planetary round limits. It was sort of thought as endless resource, cheap resource, the water, the air, the wood, the biodiversity. And so it has perversive incentives. We support from our budgets the fossil fuels much more than what we put on the climate change in global level. For example, we put in various places of our regulation that kind of disincentives to put the costs, the internalize the cost of environment inside the business. And so if the business does it, the costs are higher than for those ones who do not do it. So it is very negative situation. And okay, the level playing fields needs to be there, but not on the way that we try to compete on the bottom, but on the way that you internalize the cost, you make them visible. And this is the whole sustainable finance. It is company reporting, finance disclosure, all this. And it needs to be coherent and comparable, a bit like the accounting in IFRS. It needs to be global in the longer run, and we are on the way on that. And of course, to start with, it needs to be pan-European, EU-wide. And this is what we have been working for quite a long time. And then by that way, we would need to incentivize of getting cheaper loans, better investment environment for those companies that are moving faster pace, and those ones having a clear transition plan if they are far from sustainability. And then, of course, the public budget, that is, and EU funds and all that, that is another story. We need to secure that the state aid, national budget and all that include the same analysis. And we need to stop fueling the fossil industry, so stop all the environmentally negative subsidies. Plus, you would save your money, public funds.
Thank you, Sirpa. Ilari, how can a level playing field in environmental regulation help businesses stay competitive and secure long-term market access?
I would a little bit continue where Sirpa left off in terms of level playing fields not being a race to the bottom, but something else. I mean, level playing field is as a general concept, it's a prerequisite for a functioning market. Otherwise, we end up in a situation where competition happens by means that are detrimental to the market, detrimental to the customers, and detrimental to the environment. And at the risk of sounding a little bit old-fashioned, I would take as a great example of level playing field creation the mechanisms that we have for international technical standardization in CEN and ISO. This is not really environmental regulation yet, but it's an example of a mechanism which enforces technically level playing fields in not only within the European market, but internationally, globally even. And that kind of thinking, if we can get that kind of thinking and those kinds of mechanisms into the regulatory space, which explicitly define from an environmental sustainability standpoint minimum performance levels that we need to target, that provides the level playing field above which anyone can then compete with the same performance characteristics on the products and services. And at the same time, I do fully agree with Sirpa on the point of internalizing the environmental costs that are now being either not covered by anyone or being in a way indirectly subsidized by public expenditure in terms of repairing the damage that somebody has done, or in the worst case might skew competition in the sense that it directs demand because of price reasons to products and services that perform even in an unacceptable level. So level playing field also in environmental regulation is really a fundamentally important topic, and we need to try to strive towards that goal by focusing on performance-related regulation. It's from a finance and investment point of view, we have instruments in place which, as Sirpa said, are trying to steer investment to companies and projects that are transparent, disclose, and perform as organizations on a given level. But we would need to, in my view, we'd need to do the same on product and service regulation level to create a market-specific level playing field rather than a company level playing.
Mm.
Thank you, Ilari. Céline, thank you so much for joining us today. We were just discussing how a level playing field and environmental regulation can help businesses stay competitive and secure long-term market access. But before you answer that question, I would love for you just to quickly introduce yourself to our audience. Thank you for joining us a bit late. We're so delighted you could join. So maybe tell us who you are, and then we'll get to the topic at hand. Perfect timing.
Okay, thank you, Abby. Apologies, I overcome that little trick. So I'm Céline Carré. I'm head of public affairs with Saint-Gobain, which is a French company in building materials, insulation, glass, gypsum, you name it. And we're celebrating this year our 360th anniversary. I'm very happy to be with you today.
Brilliant. It's perfect timing that you've joined. Thank you, Céline. So the question that I would like to ask you is, how can a level playing field and environmental regulation help businesses stay competitive and secure long-term market access?
Yes. So I think that question of the level playing field, it has to be understood in the context of the sector, at least for in which I am, which is construction, where change takes a very long time to hit the ground. So we've seen it in the EU. It was a decade to roll out NZEP, near zero energy building regulations, and this is due to how fragmented, I prefer to say, how diverse the sector is. So change is very different, and the dynamic of investment very different. So the regulation needs to embrace this reality to catalyze action. And first, also, business needs to have clarity of a regulation, a long-term objective, milestones. All of this is fostering the collaboration. And when it comes to long-term market access, it's both about how competitive our solutions are. So we like to say we enhance performance, we reduce environmental impact. This is how we practice sustainability in Saint-Gobain. And for that, we need access to resources. We need to have access to affordable decarbonized energy. Then it's also about the alignment and the consistency of the drivers. So regulation is one, but you would also have a market preparatory dynamics. You would have public procurement. You would have interaction between voluntary and regulatory drivers. And the point about the level playing field is also very important, both within the EU and outside the EU. So Saint-Gobain is a global actor. And so we're not in an island in the EU. It's very important to remind ourselves. We need to have, for that level playing field, the access to the information, and information needs to be built around the same rules of so it's about calculation, it's about life cycle analysis. So we need to be able to compare the same thing. It's also about the consistency of standards. We're talking environmental product declaration, so how is that interacting with building level regulation? So on this, there is still a lot of work to be done at the EU level, for example, to avoid that gaps would emerge, affecting the level playing field due to too much flexibility, for example, on how to account for life cycle. So I stop here for the moment. Thanks.
Panu, would you like to respond?
Yeah, so just to highlight on a couple of points. So as Sirpa highlighted, so the resources are finite, like many of them. Some of them renew, not all, right? And what happens is that the resources become more expensive. And you need to only have one market to make your whole company better, because as soon as you learn that you can do certain things more efficiently, you will roll it out in all of your operations, right? And that will actually protect your business against future risks and against future cost increases on energy, on raw materials, on critical resources and waste handling, everything you want, right? So, and those gains that you gain in resource efficiency, they stay with you irrespective of policy cycle. Like those gains are not going to go away. That's the first thing. That's like a structural improvement is possible because of, regulations pushing you to do better. They are very hard to achieve otherwise in many industries. The second thing is that regulatory environment makes products comparable and often performance visible. So nobody would buy a product with blood on it, right? Okay, but carbon is invisible. Environmental impacts in the supply chain, they are invisible. So you don't know, you wouldn't be able to tell what's the harm a certain thing has caused. But the regulations, they actually make things visible, and they make it possible for you to understand what am I actually buying here. Because race to bottom is obviously very, easy when everything looks the same. But when you get this dimension of visibility, then it's actually possible for you as a buyer to, to say that I don't want that. That's actually using 3 times more, fossil fuels than this other product. And guess what? Maybe there's some other benefits in choosing the other product, because maybe it's made with an innovative manner, and the innovative manner gives me some benefits as well. So I think those would be the 2 things I would add on top of what was said in the previous.
Thank you,
And if
Panu.
I may, I would like to add one point. And this is what you all touched, and it is the importance and meaning of the regulation, because quite often in politics you hear, okay, if it's so well and good business, why don't companies do it by themselves and win? And as we know, if it is unfair, as Ilari pointed out, you can't win in that game if the others are using unlawful means of doing it. And think if you wouldn't have a property rights, think if you wouldn't have any other sort of legal points, you would not have certainty to construct the business, to innovate, and to finance, to invest on good things. And what you do it, and what is the role of politicians, is to create a long-term perspective by regulation, in environmental regulation. Okay, we are going to go on climate neutral, biodiversity compensative, non-harmful, non-toxic chemicals, on better resource efficiency. And then you get the investments, you get a security to make the plans and to innovate. I hope that all of you, when you are talking to politicians, to remind that, because there are a lot of businesses saying, no, don't regulate. We'll do it by ourselves, and those are actually those ones benefiting of the existing regulatory framework that is distorted, as I told.
That's an extremely good point, and I would be from a company point of view the first to say that regulation is a good thing, especially if the regulation is smart and designed in a good manner. Of course, it's not regulation is not a goal on its own right. It needs to serve, as you Sirpa just said, it needs to be an instrument that serves a longer term stable political objective to create a market which performs, for example, in an environmental standpoint as it should.
Exactly.
So, as regulations in Europe are being overhauled, maybe via omnibus, do you think in a European context that we are moving forward, or are we moving backward in sustainability? Sirpa, I'll pass that to you first.
We are moving to confusion, I would say. The world won't stop, even though whatever we do in the politics about omnibus. There are going to be forward-looking investors looking forward for the information, and we do have over 200 different reporting schemes, and 5 of them are regularly used. And if you want to avoid the bureaucracy, administrative burden that is quite often talked in politics, then actually you are going to increase if you are going to fade out the European single reporting scheme on this sustainability area. Okay, that is the first point. Then the second point is that did we get it right? No, and that was Ilari's hope for clear long-term looking incentivizing regulation. Well, this is what I'm trying to do, and the Social Democrats think that they are trying to do it, and so forth. And in democracy, you get imperfect results. And this is a piece of 5 pieces of regulation. And of course, because they are dealt separately, there's slight differences, like, having different standards in a way. And what the idea of the omnibus is, and what it should have been, is to simplify that. That means to decide, okay, this is how you calculate CO2. This is the threshold up to from what level. This is how you do this and that. And then how you put it in one single platform, and how that is transformed to single access point, that is the European platform for financial information, so that you can use then in comparable way when you are investor, consumer, bank, or whatever you are. Well, this should have been done, but actually this the Commission is not proposing. It is proposing to raise the threshold of those companies that report. Well, as said, probably then some of the companies won't do it. Some of them would use the 5 different reporting schemes. Then, of course, they are putting it downwards to the whole supply chain, of course. Well, then another proposal is that you wouldn't need to report the whole supply chain. It would be just the first point. Think of textiles. You have a retailer, you report, then you report about your wholesaler. But what about the textiles, where you bought them and how they were produced, or construction that Céline and Ilari you are on? You would report about the wholesaler where you buy them, but not what materials out of where, if you have subcontractors and so forth. So it gives distorted information. It leads to misinvestments, and then we need to come back after a couple of years. Won't work. we need to change. And this is a poison for investments and finance and, of course, for the companies themselves putting up the new kind of businesses. So all in all, I think that what we are doing in that kind of a political panic, because as I said, there's this kind of a headwind against the sustainability. Now we have a Ukraine war. Now we have the competitiveness, and there was quite outroar in German before the German elections. That sort of a nervous part of the politics pretty severely. So you react by your backbone for political pressure on ideological grounds, and what you end up doing is not only throwing the baby with the washing water, bathing water, but throwing the baby and leaving the bathing water. So that means leaving the very distorted, not standardized reporting framework, and then sort of getting rid of the need to report. And what about those good companies that are doing it, that have been implementing it, that try to create competitive advantage out of it? Why do we hit them? This is a question I just can't grasp. And sometimes there's too little of understanding how business works in politics. And well, this is in all of our responsibility to try to convey the right message, because this kind of a sort of coming back to regulation idea that, okay, always less regulation is better world is not right. You do not get regulation right in democracy, but you can always improve it. But sort of destroying it doesn't improve the world.
Let's hear now from the business perspective. I think this is great kind of fodder to hear like the response from business. Ilari, let's pass to you, and then Céline will pass to you and hear your perspective and your take.
Well, thank you. I think it's a little bit premature to say whether we are going forward or backward with things like the omnibus, but what I would like to point out with that is, also in the public discussion that I've been observing in various media and LinkedIn and so forth, people are mixing up two things. One is, I think simplification of regulation is always welcome. So structure should be simple. There should not be overlapping reporting requirements. There should not be overlapping mechanisms in the regulation. But at the same time, and that's all welcome. And that if this is the path we are taking, that's taking us forward. But if we at the same time start questioning or backing away from the longer term political ambitions that we want to get to, how does the market need to, what do we want to have a climate neutral Europe by year XYZ? Do we want to have a functioning circular economy by another year? Those we shouldn't back away from, because it's those longer term political objectives that create predictability. Then again, is just the means of getting towards the goals. And I fully agree with Sirpa. It's, we never get regulation at the first or second or third time right, and that's a characteristic of democracy. That's how it works. But another good characteristic of democracy is we can always accept that we went wrong at some point, so let's do it better now. So and that's an iteration. But that iteration we shouldn't do that in two big steps. First jump to a hugely complicated way of regulating things and then jump directly to the other extreme, because that would be hitting the good companies, as Sirpa said, that have already invested in doing something. So let's correct the things that we got right or wrong, turn them better, but let's do that in planned, incremental, manageable steps rather than, jumping 1 kilometer that way and then coming back again. And then the other thing I wanted to say, and this comes back to what Céline mentioned earlier, when we design regulations, we should always try to understand the market context in which that particular industry operates. I mean, one way of regulating products or reporting requirements probably does not very well fit all the imaginable industries. So to get a common platform for everyone, that needs to be pretty simple. But then for the construction value chain, for the textile value chain, for critical minerals value chain, you might then have sector-specific, more detailed requirements. One of the, in my humble opinion, one general thing that we didn't get right in the EU taxonomy in the very first instance was that it's imposed structurally on all industries, whereas it actually really applies to only a smaller number of sectors. So these sorts of things I would welcome correcting. But I want to underline that in order to take European competitiveness towards a sustainable direction, we should not back away from the longer term ambition levels. That would only take us several steps back.
Céline, what are your thoughts? Céline, you're on mute.
Sorry, yeah. Now okay? Yeah. I was saying there's
Yes.
very little to disagree with what Sirpa and Ilari have said. I mean, in a sense, if we look back, reporting is helping us internally, is helping others. So we do it also to help structure our own homework on that journey, sustainability, decarbonization. Then yes, Simplify can help to some extent if it's getting too complex with the reporting. It can also reduce the gap between the smaller and the bigger actors. So that can be meaningful to look at where things can be facilitated on that road. But then this political mantra around simplification gets us to a very blurry, confusing and dangerous area. Because of what was just said, we risk putting into question the very goals of the EU Green Deal. And I had that, thinking about your question, I had that image, the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona. I mean, it takes time, but if you want to improve things, you're not going to start touching the foundation of it. And that's where I think we need to be very careful, because by doing simplification, we could actually harm both competitiveness and sustainability. Reopening certain files, and then it goes beyond the reporting, because this is a discussion. It's not just omnibus reporting, CSRD, CS3D. It's about maybe other files. And when I hear, maybe let's reopen the Energy Efficiency Directive, then I hear, okay, all of the investment that people are preparing to implement that file, they are going to be put on hold. By doing this, we're jeopardizing the very chance of reaching our 2030 target, while at the same time, we're considering our 2040 target. It does not make sense. So we also need to understand that regulation is a trigger, but around that, there are elements that put the glue on it, the soft levers, such as capacity building in local administration, such as financing schemes, this subtle interaction between public-private finance, for example, for renovation. It's getting to very elaborated, mature dimension. If we stop this, then we lose 5-10 years. A new software, new collaboration are triggered by regulation. So we need to be very careful about the simplification. I would just conclude by saying, if we think it's too complex, too sophisticated, like a 5-star restaurant menu, maybe we can make it simpler, but we cannot allow ourselves in the EU to go for junk food instead, because that would actually make China or the US too happy about that. So very, very worried about this. Thanks.
If I may quickly add to that, because you touched in the middle of your sentence a very important point. You said something like reporting is not done only for the sake of reporting, but to create understanding and insight and all these sorts of things. I think from a political point of view, it would be really important also to understand that we should not end up in a situation where reporting is done because of regulatory requirements. And I see large corporations in the world where reporting is its own discipline, but that doesn't touch the actual business at all. And if we end up in that situation where we do reporting because it's mandatory, but it doesn't support customers or investors making better and more educated choices, or if it doesn't support us, that the data that we generate wouldn't support us in improving our internal efficiency or making our own procurement decisions better, then we are in a wrong type of reporting regulation. So the business angle would need to be there all the time.
Panu, are we moving forward or backward with regulation overall?
Omnibus gets a lot of media coverage, yeah. It's visible, it's easy to talk about, everybody understands it. But really a lot of the work is done on the more technical regulations. And guess what? Governments implement them, companies implement them, standards group implement them. So reality is the industry is moving forward on many fronts. And then there's these controversial things that would get a lot of attention. And we should not forget that we have, big energy performance for buildings directive revision ongoing, and countries are putting it into law. We have a lot of product standards which are guaranteeing more sustainable and less wasteful products and more maintainable products, and all of those are going forward. So jumping to conclusion because of Omnibus A or B, right? I mean, it gives the wrong understanding of what's actually happening on the market. So the money is following the product and the market directives, because that's how you trade. And the trade fundamentally, as Sirpa said, is the lifeblood, right? So how trade is done is more important than how reporting is done. So that's how I would look at it.
So we're actually nearing time for this conversation. So I'd like to pose our final question in lightning round fashion. Yeah, so we'll go, you'll sort of race through your answer and summarize in a nutshell what you think about Europe in terms of, is it helping or harming European competitiveness by introducing more stringent sustainability regulation? Sirpa, lightning round, I'll pass that to you first.
Certainly it is helping, but it should be as clear as possible. And just to refer on this reporting and everything, just please reflect what is the IFRS and accounting. The environmental, the sustainability reporting should be the same, and the consequences, okay, if you go the wrong direction, it has consequences and it leads to company development. And about these data points, my point there is, yes, like in IFRS, there are many data points because the insurance companies need different kind of data points than milk or construction, but they need to be calculated in the same way so that you can make comparison across the industries as well. And so we are in the right track, as Panu said. And we need just to keep on there and, of course, improve the regulation, as Michael Porter said. Always after innovations and sustainability points, the products and goods are better and more competitive because you make other improvements on the way also. And so it is something that spears up the innovation as well.
Ilari, is Europe helping or harming competitiveness by introducing more stringent sustainability regulation?
Europe will definitely help its competitiveness by creating more ambitious and stringent sustainability-related regulation if it's done in a smart way and if it is focusing on the trading part, so the performance of products and services put on the market. That drives innovation and that sets the bar on the in a correct way. So that to me is the fundamental question. And then it allows, if you create the metrics for performance in the right way, that allows companies then to go way beyond that bar and compete on that performance.
Céline.
Yes. We need that regulation that indeed drives innovation by giving sufficient time and sufficient perspective to all actors. And that's the beauty about the kind of sustainability regulation in our sector. It acts as a point to which all actors in all the diversity, from the finance industry, manufacturers, architect, real estate developers, they can act together. And this is what's quite often overlooked. And then that kind of good regulation needs to understand the dynamics of change in each sector. And in the construction sector, the dynamics of change is also a very strong interaction between the voluntary and the regulatory drivers. So I think it's important to remind ourselves all the work that has been done so that the regulation is not disruptive or adding unnecessary requirements. And I would finish to remind that in the sector also, the good regulation is regulation that is underpinned by collaboration with all the actors in the frame of roadmaps, be it for decarbonization or for circularity. And those regulations that do not have such background, that have not, where actors have not tried to work out how to overcome their divergences, those regulations will have a shorter lifetime. So we need to work in that perspective, which can actually help overcome political turbulences.
And Panu, final for you.
So, as Ilari said, where things are traded, sustainability regulations are extremely desirable. However, when things are manufactured, it's not necessarily so. So we already have pretty high standards for many aspects in environmental aspects. But let's say we need to build a new aluminium plant to make green aluminium in Europe. The permitting process will really take long, right? And we have seen how trade is volatile. So there are things like that, so where we can actually damage the transformation of economy to green economy by making it harder to make new investments. So that's kind of the only case where we can go wrong. Otherwise, it's all good.
Otherwise, it's all good. I think that's a great note to end. Thank you, Céline, Ilari, Sirpa, and Panu for joining today's conversation as part of the Summer Sustainability Summit. And I'm sure this talk has been very beneficial and eye-opening for everyone in the audience. So thank you very much for your time and for your organizations for representing the conversation today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Abigail. That was very interesting. I'm Steve from Product Marketing at One Click LCA, and today I'm going to talk to you about something new we are launching that's going to make One Click LCA even better. Across the built environment, one shift is clear. Carbon data is now a business-critical requirement. It impacts permitting, procurement, and credibility. In our 2025 Carbon Experts report, 83% of ASE professionals confirmed that environmental product declarations influence their material choices. At the same time, over 60% have already achieved embodied carbon reductions using LCA insights. But many still face data quality issues, fragmented EPD availability, and resource bottleneck. That's what we address with the One Click LCA Power Pack. For designers, engineers, and consultants, carbon performance is increasingly tied to project success, but poor quality LCA data remains a risk. One Click LCA's Power Pack for construction professionals solves this in 3 ways. First, AI-backed plausibility checking and internal verification workflows reduce the risk by ensuring your LCAs meet the required quality and consistently. Second, Carbon Designer 3D's generative design and the LCA chat assistant give early-stage carbon feedback instantly, supporting informed trade-offs during design. Third, automated reporting templates enable the delivery of branded certification-ready results in minutes, saving significant time and reducing review cycles. Manufacturers face a surge in EPD demand, especially in Europe, the UK, and North America. Yet 81% of surveyed manufacturers identify the complexity and cost of EPD creation and verification as a top barrier. One Click LCA's Power Pack for manufacturing and EPD professionals enables you to run pre-verification with our EPD quality checker to catch compliance issues early. It allows you to manage multi-site operations through centralized data inputs, allowing you to generate unlimited project-specific EPDs. And third, it allows you to export globally relevant branded EPD reports in multiple languages, supporting both compliance and client trust. From the EU's construction product regulation to Buy Clean mandates in North America, the carbon requirements in the UK, policy is converging on one thing: verifiable whole-life carbon data. The Energy Performance of Building Directive mandates embodied carbon reporting in 2028. France RE 2020, Denmark and Finland are already enforcing caps. And over 90% of manufacturers expect regulatory pressure to increase. This is not a future problem, it's here now. Automation, high-quality data, and credible verification are the only scalable responses. To close the gap between intent and implementation, the sector needs to scale, and scale requires automation. One Click LCA's Power Pack exists to make this possible with the tools built for your workflows, compliance frameworks, and business pressures. If you want to learn more about the benefits of the One Click LCA Power Pack, click on the link in the comments. Over to you, Kim.
Super. Thank you, Stephen, for a great presentation. And next up, we will be joined by Paul Astle, the Decarbonization Lead for Global Buildings at Ramboll. He's going to talk about the Energy Performance and Buildings Directive, aka EPBD, and its implications for carbon assessment. So, warmly welcome, Paul. I will let you introduce yourself a bit better and get started with the presentation. Happy to have you here with us today.
Great, thank you very much, Kim, and good afternoon, everyone. So, as Kim said, I'm Paul Astle. I'm the Decarbonization Lead for Ramboll for Global Buildings, and I'm going to be talking about the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, specifically the implications for carbon assessment and building design. So just a very quick bit of background. For those of you that don't know, Ramboll's a global architecture engineering consultant. We have more than 18,000 people around the world. We're headquartered in Denmark, and we have a large presence in Europe. Of course, therefore, things like the EPBD and other regulations are very important to our clients and to what we design as well. So this is a really important topic for us, and I'm delighted to be looking at it today with you. So if we just take a quick step back and talk about the emissions and the energy use in the EU, around 40% of energy consumed in the EU is used in buildings, and a third of the EU's GHG emissions are associated with buildings as well. And then when we look at the embodied carbon, between 5 and 12% of emissions are associated with material extraction, manufacturing, and the renovation of buildings. So collectively, buildings account for a really substantial amount of energy use as well as emissions in the EU, and therefore it's critical that we tackle this area. Now, in terms of where we want to get to, of course, we need to decarbonize our existing building stock. We need more reuse and refurbishment. We need low or perhaps net zero whole life carbon new construction. And importantly, for all of those things, we need mandatory and consistent carbon measurement and assurance. Now, we're not there yet. If we look at where we are today, we have huge variation in existing building stocks performance. Some reuse is happening, but not enough and not consistently. And historically, there's been a focus on the operational performance of new construction, which has made a lot of sense, but we really need now to move towards whole life carbon. So thinking about the embodied carbon as well as the operational carbon. And there is huge variation in carbon assessment approaches, both across different member states and actually even within those member states too. So there's a lot of work to do there. And the EPBD recast, so the 2024 version, is aiming to tackle a lot of those things and get us closer to where we need to be. I'm just going to focus though on some of the key aspects of the regulation with respect to carbon assessment of buildings and the carbon targets too. So there's three really important elements to this. The first is the requirement to measure and disclose life cycle GWP. The second is the requirement to have target and limit values for that life cycle GWP. And the third is the requirement to adopt a common approach to the calculation of life cycle GWP as well. And for those of you that perhaps aren't as familiar with that language, life cycle GWP is also commonly referred to as whole life carbon. So it's really all the emissions associated with the building from its design, construction, operation, use, and ultimately its end of life as well. And when it comes to the disclosure of the emissions, that's in the first one, that is going to be on the energy performance certificate of the building. EPCs in the future will become incredibly important documents that talk about not only the energy performance, but also the carbon performance of buildings. Now, all of this is not going to happen in one go. There is a carefully coordinated time frame to bring things to different member states. We had the EPBD published last year. By the end of this year, there will be a framework published which talks about much more detail on the national calculation requirements for life cycle GWP. So that's going to be a really important thing which comes out December, hopefully this year. Now, by 2027, then, each member state will need a national roadmap detailing the introduction of targets and limit values on this whole life carbon, the cumulative life cycle GWP. And by 2028, larger buildings, those over 1,000 square meters, will need to assess and disclose that GWP, that life cycle GWP, in their EPCs. And then by 2030, all new buildings will need to measure and disclose, as well as complying with the limit values set out in each national roadmap. Really, a lot of things are going to happen over the next 5 years, a lot of big change. It's quite exciting. And I'm really looking forward to Ramboll being part of that and supporting our clients on that journey. Now, of course, not everyone is starting from scratch. Some countries have been ahead of the game, and notably the Netherlands, France, and Denmark already have requirements for carbon assessment and also limit values in place. And many other countries are moving towards that as well, with either carbon assessment requirements or limit values coming a bit further down the road. So we're all moving in the right direction, but nevertheless, there's going to need to be a real shift in the next 5 years for how buildings are assessed and also designed. Now, if I just jump into a few of the examples that I mentioned there, Denmark and France. Looking at Denmark, Denmark has had a requirement for carbon assessment and limit values in place since 2023, and this year they've actually tightened those requirements even further, and you can see those in the table on the right there. They've broken it down by different typologies, and it then decreases over the coming years as well, so it's going to be really tightened up in the future. Now, the new 2025 limit values are significantly lower than those in 2023, so much more aligned to the absolute sustainability limits set out in the planetary boundaries. More buildings are going to be included than were originally captured in 2023, and the scope has also been increased as well to include A4 and A5, which is the transport and construction part of a new building. This is really important because as part of the overall EPBD, there'll be a harmonization of those scopes. What we've found is with these new requirements, 85% of new buildings will have to perform better. That's a huge quantity. So some buildings do meet those requirements, but the vast majority are going to have to perform better. Now, because we are a Danish company, that's where our headquarters are, we have a very large buildings operation in Denmark. We've done some extra work on this, looking at what might happen for our clients and of course for our designs. So last year we published a white paper looking at 5 existing Ramboll projects and looking at those retrospectively to understand what would need to happen to meet those new regulations. What we found actually was that most typologies could comply with the regulations, the limit values, but some areas were struggling more than others, particularly industry and logistic buildings were struggling. In order to meet those regulations, though, we had to use a lot of best practice products, a lot of specific products, and that gives little flexibility in the design, which is not realistically feasible at scale and for most projects. So we recognize that in practice, in order to meet those regulations, most projects will have to take new measures much earlier on in the design stage and focus in on the initial concept. So really what we found was that whilst those improvements in building products will help, and they're going to help us meet the regulations, the greatest reductions we can make will be from the materials that we don't use. And that means more reuse, more using reclaimed materials, as well as also more efficient design and lean design. Looking at France, though, and this information is from Jérôme de Valentin from VisCab, who presented a few weeks ago, actually. He was able to talk about what's happening in France and the experience of having those regulations in place. They've had regulations looking at some typologies since 2022, and there's now quite a large body of evidence from projects that have gone through that process. They've seen that it's starting to have an impact on how buildings are designed. In a recent survey, 3/4 of the professionals they talked to, and including contractors, have said that design decisions have been changed, different design approaches are taken in order to meet those regulations. So this is showing that the regulations are starting to have an effect. It's also spurred the generation of a whole new number of verified EPDs, environmental performance declarations, which are necessary in order to provide the data to do that carbon assessment. So that's been a really big change as well. But it is still a burden to carry out a carbon assessment. And on this survey that was carried out with the French industry, it was found that typically a carbon assessment was taking between 4 and 7 days, as you can see, and that's quite a significant burden, particularly for some smaller projects. So automation, AI perhaps are going to be really key in reducing that load, that burden, as well as trying to get more interoperability between LCA tools, EPD data, and also the BIM data as well. So if we bring those things together and just talk about what's going to happen as a result of the EPBD, well, first of all, there's going to be an explosion in the demand for carbon assessments. Every new building in the EU from 2030 will require a carbon assessment, every large building from 2028. So that's going to require thousands more carbon assessments across all member states. So really significant change there. Now, the reality is that we probably don't have the people or the skills or can afford that level of increase in carbon assessments immediately. So we're going to have to use automation, AI, and other digital tools to reduce the burden and also actually to meet the demand that we're going to have. In addition to that, we need the carbon data to support those carbon assessments. There's going to need to be a lot more EPDs carried out and probably more regular EPDs carried out for all the different materials that we use. There is, though, going to be some standardization. That's a really important part because this regulation should push towards an approach that makes it a lot easier to understand different carbon assessments in different countries and hopefully actually provide some inertia for global harmonization as well. The public disclosure will provide really powerful insight of carbon as well. Ramboll's been producing or releasing our carbon assessments through our global tool Compare, where we're showing different carbon assessments that we've undertaken, and we found really powerful uptake in people using that to understand the carbon in different typologies, different countries, and using that information to hopefully make better design decisions. So in the coming years, we're going to have thousands of data points, which are going to be really important to share and to make sure people know best practice, not just in the EU, but also globally. And finally, meeting those limit values is going to change design. It's not going to be possible to meet the limit values through material substitution alone. Design will need to change and will need to adopt new approaches in order to meet them. So if I just pull all that together, it's quite a short, quick, presentation really, but just in summary, EU buildings are a major source of emissions, as we've talked about, really significant area that we need to tackle. The updated EPBD is going to provide a really comprehensive approach to tackle both operational carbon, whole life carbon, including embodied, and actually also refurbishment as well. Importantly, it includes limits to life cycle emissions or whole life carbon. That's really key in bringing things down collectively. There's going to be a need for a huge increase in carbon assessment capacity and data. And carbon assessments, those should be more aligned in their approach, really fundamental. And I'm certainly looking forward to that as well. By 2030, all new buildings in the EU will require carbon assessments and will need to meet the limit values of their different countries. Lower carbon materials are going to be important, but we're also going to need to change how we design buildings. And that's a little bit scary perhaps to some, but I think it's a really exciting time in the industry. We're really looking forward to supporting our clients to deliver lower carbon buildings using the EPBD as a really powerful catalyst to do that. Thank you very much.
Paul, anything you'd like to add still as a one call to action that you'd like the people to remember from your presentation?
I would just say that, the EPBD is a really powerful catalyst for change, and I think it's a really exciting time. And I would recommend that all people in the industry try and embrace this period as an opportunity to have lower carbon buildings, high performance buildings, and embrace the change that's coming, because that's the only certainty that we have.
Super. That's a good way to sum it up, Paul. I would like to say at this point, huge thank you for a great presentation on EPBD. And next up, we will be joined by Tuomas Jääskeläinen, our very own carbon expert in the EU region. And he's going to do a quick demo of our EPD solution. So warmly welcome, Tuomas.
Thank you very much, Kim. My name is Tuomas. I'm a business developer for One Click LCA and more specifically for the Nordic region. Nice to be here today. Today I'm going to show you and do a walkthrough of One Click LCA's EPD generation. And what you can see here basically is our EPD generator tool. As you can see, the tool that we are using today is EPD generator for EPD Hub by their PCRs, and this tool is pre-verified. We have two different designs. So what we have here is our current production version from 2023, and then we have some product development version for 2026. When we go downwards, we can see a different metrics for both of these designs over here. So we can see all the impact categories, the life cycle stages. We can see where the emissions are coming from. We can see the elements of each of them and the emission intensive materials, compare them, and so on and so forth. But this is not the point. The point is that how we create an EPD with a very automated and fast-paced tool. So basically, what we have here, if we open this tab, you have the lifecycle module. So here the software will ask you all the required information for creating an EPD. And once we have gone this through, you should have EPD ready to the verification and to be published in EPD Hub's database. So let's go here. So I have pre-opened these different tabs. And we start with product description. From there, we go to declarate unit, and from there, we start the modeling. So the first page is basically the cover letter information for the EPDs. So my company's imaginary informations, product identifications, what model we have, additional labels, manufacturing site names, raw material origin countries, etc., etc. Then we already predefined this kind of classification for the One Click LCA database as well. So when you know that we are working as well with many industry players in the AEC, which are manufacturers' first-hand buyers, so you can classify your EPD to be going to the right place in the designers and the end customers' workflow. We basically have all the construction materials which are existing in the market right now. Then we can add some additional labeling, for example, GTIN code, the knob number, And the number 4 segment over here is the product information. So for example, if I would use, let's say, recycled aluminium as the conductor in this product, I should probably write that here. This is usually wrote from the, let's say, sustainability angle, this text over here. We have the raw material compositions, biogenic carbon, which are coming from the calculations later on, and then the reach materials. But yeah, basically this is the first page, and let's move forward. So the second page is the declarate unit, where we basically defined what is the declarated unit for the published EPD. So in cable's case, it's usually a meter, but it also could be a kilogram. In the case of windows or doors, it can be a square meter, and then if you're working with concrete, it could be a cubic meter. We have the mass per unit, we have the functional unit, and we have the product designed reference service life over here. So pretty straightforward, at least in the beginning, and it's actually pretty straightforward when we go into the modeling itself too. So what you can see here is our product template for these cables and medium voltage cables. And this is basically where companies and the companies who are starting with us usually starts from. So we have several, basically all the construction material templates existing, which helps you when you start to work with EPDs, so you don't have to start from the scratch. Over here, so we have the raw materials, so the PVC parts for the sealed. We have the aluminum production, polyethylene, copper, plastic, and copper tape. So these are the essential materials for the product. And when we open these, we can see what is inside of each of these data points. These are so-called groups. So these are not individual data points, but the groups where we have multiple different data points within one over here. It's a part of the software's modularity functions, which is very, very useful when you go forward and start to create your second EPD, for example. Then, how this works and how you put this data in the manual way is that you basically try to get a different or the right data points for your product from this our largest database in the world, and you can consider this as the Google of environmental information. So I wrote aluminium. I can see that the database has been structured, and probably we shouldn't open partition system, for example, but more like raw material in this case when we're working with cables. So I get some matches. I'll try to find the best one and the most suitable one for my use. And we could say that we use bronze wire rod in our product. Or when we go downwards, we can see that there should be some other data as well, addition to generics. So let's go downwards, downwards, downwards. Over here, we can start to see that we have some EPDs as well. So for example, this EPD has been published in RTS Finland. And then we have some, for example, EPD hub matches. So you can use as well your supplier's data if they have EPDs. And in general, that's the most accurate way to do your EPDs too. But just for the demonstration, let's say that we have aluminum oxide here, which we probably don't have, but anyways. We add it to the design, we add the quantity, let's say 1 kilogram. It's the conductor material. We add the function for this raw material in the product. And then we would put in transportation kilometers and the way that it's coming to our factory. So for example, Euro Lorry 5 over here, and let's say 300 kilometers. So this is basically how you add a data point for the design. You do the same for auxiliary and packaging materials. So for example, we have Euro pallets here. We have some lubrication oil for our production to be running. We have a tap water for the production, and so on and so forth. This was the A1 to A3, basically the most complex part of this whole thing. We go forward, we have A3, so the energy consumption in our production. So we have heat production for the facility, we have electricity for the production. We might have some engines running the lines when we're doing our cables, so that has to be counted in, and some more electricity profiles if we would want to or have to use that. But basically the same logic what I showed you in A1, you find the data point, you add it here, you put the quantity, you do the allocation by the rules which is set in the standardizations, and then you set your process direct emissions. Pretty straightforward still, and this is basically how the EPD is starting to come together. Then on A4, we basically inform where we usually send our product to. So this can be your wholesaler, this can be the construction site, and the average of those transportation from 2023 in my case. So you go this through, you set all the data points, you go by the guidelines, you go by the standards, and you answer the questions. End of life, same thing. I'm not going to go in too deep over here, but you can see that there's a pre-filled data applicable for this type of products, and you don't have to, start figuring out anything from the scratch. We go to the EPD description, and we're coming near end of this whole process. So manufacturing and packaging summaries of how we do things, transportation installations, product use and maintenance, end of lives, etc. And we do that for basically those modules that we're calculating and publishing with this EPD. Then we have a background report. So here we have some data quality assessments, assumption and limitation if we have had to do those things. And basically that's it. Now we have pretty much put all the data in that we need, and we can move into the result page. So here we have some standardized data from every single life cycle module, first of all, but the different emission categories too. So from the GVP to depletion in the stratosphere and acidification, and to, for example, water usage. You can go into details in all of these. As you can see, the green buttons, I can open them in even more detailed. We have the A1 standard over here. We have Tracy, and everything is, automatically done by the data that you have put in. Then we have some more graphs. So we can get very advanced data graphs for many different uses, which all of these you can export and put in your yearly report, for example, or the product development report, or these kind of things when you're doing, for example, comparisons between your suppliers. So everything is like real life, and you can real time make comparisons, for example, between the suppliers of our aluminium in this case. Yeah, engineers usually like this part to see all the data and being able to do the comparisons. Okay, now we're ready with the EPD. What would I do? I would click actually one button and submit this for a verifier through the software, and I'm not going to push this because actually it would go to EPD Hub's workflow, and or we can create an EPD as a Word report, which I have done. and I will take this file over here. So over here, we have the photo of the product. We could have the branding of your company over here as well. So your logos added here. The general informations from the beginning, if you remember this one. And everything related to the EPD and by the standardization is now here. So you don't have to put anything together manually. Software and the workflow takes care of it. And for example, including your manufacturing process, it can be breakdown here. Lifecycle assessment and the cutoff criteria are explained over here as well. And we have data, a lot of data with different scenarios and for different systems, for example, French over here. And when we go down, we can see our verification statement, if there would be such, and the signature of the verifier. But yeah, as you can see, EPD creation these days is not that difficult, and our workflow supports thousands of people who have started basically without zero experience of one-click or either LCA processes, and it's designed for be suitable for anyone.
Excellent. Thank you, Tuomas, for a great demo. And I hope you in the audience as well got some practical new information that you can apply to your own projects or products as well. And with that in mind, I would love to offer you a chance to connect with us a little bit more deeply. So popping up on your screen right now, you will see a message giving you the opportunity to connect with a One Click LCA carbon expert for a free custom consultation and demo for your company. Now, through this, you will have a direct opportunity to connect with a carbon expert to see how One Click LCA's solutions might add value to your workflow. So please click yes to indicate that you are interested to get in touch with us. And when you do that, our team will then reach out to you to schedule that free custom consultation. Now, when it comes to the Sustainability Summit, this is now officially a wrap. So thank you so much for joining today's session about the European Sustainability Regulation and competitiveness. You're always welcome to connect with us directly at oneclicklca.com, and please make sure to also follow us on LinkedIn, where we're sharing valuable content each and every day on sustainability topics. So once again, thank you everyone for joining this session, and have a great day and summer.